close your eyes for a moment. What do you smell? Maybe the faint aroma of your morning coffee, lingering in the air. Perhaps the comforting scent of an old book, or the sharp, clean tang of rain on hot pavement. Our sense of smell is ancient, primal, directly wired to our deepest memories and emotions. It's a silent language, whispering tales of comfort, danger, desire. But what if that language suddenly, profoundly changed? What if the scents you encountered weren't just from the physical world around you, but from the invisible landscape within others? Imagine for a moment, not just seeing a smile, but smelling the genuine joy that birthed it. Not just hearing a comforting word, but detecting the faint, metallic tang of an underlying fear. What if, with every breath, you inhaled the very essence of another person's thoughts? Not their spoken words, not their body language, but the raw, unfiltered chemical emanations of their innermost mind. This isn't just a whimsical fantasy, but a radical thought experiment that shatters our understanding of privacy, empathy, and what it truly means to be human. What if thoughts had a scent? What if your deepest, most fleeting notions were suddenly broadcast to the world, not through sound or sight, but through an invisible, unavoidable cloud of personal odor? This concept, seemingly ripped from the pages of a sci-fi novel, invites us to explore a universe where the most intimate parts of ourselves are laid bare, creating a world both terrifyingly transparent and breathtakingly connected. Get ready to awaken an entirely new sense, because once you consider the implications, you'll never look at a crowded room or your own mind the same way again. First, let's try to conceptualize this impossible new sense. How would it even work? Perhaps the intricate dance of neural firings within our brains, the cascades of neurotransmitters and electrochemical impulses that form a thought, could release specific pheromonal compounds or volatile organic chemicals. These thought scents would then diffuse subtly, imperceptibly, from our skin, our breath, our very being, creating an olfactory signature of our inner world. Every emotion, every intention, every memory would be categorized not just by its feeling, but by its unique, discernible fragrance. Consider the immediate, overwhelming impact on basic human emotions. What would pure joy smell like? Perhaps a bright, effervescent aroma, like citrus and blooming jasmine, mingled with the warmth of freshly baked bread. And sadness. A heavy, damp scent, like decaying leaves after a long rain, or the metallic tang of tears mixed with the mustiness of regret. Anger might manifest as an acrid, sharp, almost electrical odor, like ozone before a thunderstorm, or the bitter smoke of a smoldering fire. Fear, meanwhile, could be a cold, metallic, almost ozone-like scent, mixed with the sharp tang of sweat and adrenaline, a primal signal of distress. Love, true, deep affection, might emanate as a warm, comforting blend of vanilla, musk, and a subtle sweetness that reassures and envelops. These wouldn't be subjective interpretations, but universal, recognizable scents that immediately betray the inner state of every individual you encounter. Imagine the complete overhaul of everyday social interactions. A job interview, for instance, would transform into an olfactory battlefield. You'd not only hear the applicant's confident answers, but smell the desperate anxiety, the subtle embellishments in their resume, or perhaps the genuine passion for the role that their words might fail to fully convey. The interviewer, in turn, would emit the scent of their skepticism, their preformed judgments, or even their personal biases towards the candidate. A first date, that delicate dance of curated impressions, would become an exposé. You'd smell the hopeful anticipation, the underlying nervousness, the secret judgment of your outfit, or perhaps the unmistakable scent of attraction or even deceit before a single word of flirtation is uttered. Family dinners, often a minefield of unspoken tensions, would become a symphony of conflicting aromas. The deep-seated affection, the lingering resentments from childhood, the quiet anxieties about work, all swirling around the shared plate, impossible to ignore. There would be no more poker faces, no more masking true intentions. Every internal flicker would be a public broadcast. This radical transparency would inevitably lead to the collapse of personal privacy as we know it. Every fleeting thought, every inappropriate fantasy, every critical judgment, however quickly dismissed, would be emitted for all within sniffing distance to perceive. The very concept of an inner monologue would become obsolete, as its contents would be chemically broadcast. How could you keep a secret, whether a personal desire or a carefully guarded piece of information? The scent of deceit might be a harsh, discordant, artificial odor, a sudden spike in a normally harmonious personal scent, making lies instantly detectable. Legal systems would be revolutionized. Crime scene investigators wouldn't just search for fingerprints. They'd sniff the lingering scent of guilt, the fear of the victim, the calculated intention of the perpetrator. Juries would literally smell the truth, or the lack thereof, from the witness stand. The implications for justice are profound, raising questions about intent versus outcome, and whether the asterisk thought asterisk of a crime is as damning as its execution. And what of power? Governments could develop advanced, olfactory surveillance technologies, mapping and tracking individuals not just by their physical presence, but by their emotional and intellectual states. Imagine a world where thought police are not just a dystopian concept, but a literal reality, sniffing out dissent, unapproved ideas, or even potentially criminal intentions before they manifest. Advertising, too, would be transformed. Walking past a billboard, it wouldn't just capture your gaze. It might emit a bespoke scent crafted to appeal directly to the specific cravings and insecurities it sniffs from your mind, bypassing rational thought entirely. Your deepest, unarticulated desires for a certain car, a luxury item, or a fast food meal would be detected and exploited. Yet, this unprecedented level of transparency might also usher in a new era of empathy and connection. Imagine a world where true understanding is effortless, where miscommunications based on unspoken thoughts are nearly impossible. Therapists could bypass years of patient resistance, literally smelling the roots of trauma, anxiety, or depression. A child's unspoken fear or need would be immediately apparent to a parent, fostering a deeper, more instinctive bond. Compassion might become an unavoidable, visceral experience. Encountering someone's suffering would not just be an intellectual understanding, but an olfactory one, a heavy, somber scent that evokes immediate, undeniable empathy, compelling greater aid and support from the community. Art and music could take on entirely new dimensions. Painters might not just create visual masterpieces, but scented canvases that broadcast the complex emotional landscape they navigated during creation. Musicians could compose olfactory symphonies, where the notes are accompanied by the rising and falling tides of their creative thoughts and emotions, enveloping the audience in an unprecedented sensory experience. However, adapting to this new olfactory reality would present immense practical and psychological challenges. The sheer sensory overload would be staggering. Imagine a crowded city street. Instead of a cacophony of sounds, you'd be enveloped in an overwhelming symphony of thousands of individual thought scents, a dizzying, continuous bombardment of emotions, intentions, and fleeting ideas. How would our brains cope with such a constant, unfiltered influx of information? Would we develop selective filters, tuning out the noise, or would our minds simply short-circuit? Mental discipline would become a survival skill. People would not just strive to control their actions and words, but their very thoughts, not just for moral reasons, but to avoid emitting undesirable or embarrassing scents. The rise of thought suppression, techniques, meditation, or even neurological interventions to control unwanted olfactory emissions could become commonplace. Would a new industry of olfactory hygiene emerge, offering products or treatments to mask, neutralize, or even alter one's thought scent? People might wear advanced, olfactory filters or mind masks to block incoming scents, or to prevent their own from escaping, creating a new form of social reclusion. This new reality could also lead to new forms of social stratification. Those who possess an innate ability to control their thoughts, and thus their emitted scents, might form an elite, while those whose raw, unfiltered thoughts are always on display could be marginalized. The well-scented might be viewed as trustworthy and sophisticated, while the foul-scented are ostracized. The very nature of attraction and relationships would shift. Would certain thought scents be natural aphrodisiacs, signaling desirable traits or compatibility? Or would a glimpse into someone's subconscious through their scent be a turnoff, revealing insecurities or dark thoughts that no amount of charming words could overcome? Communication itself would evolve. Would we develop new, more nuanced language to describe these thought scents? Or new forms of nonverbal communication that complement or compensate for their unavoidable presence? The subtle art of suggestion, irony, and veiled meaning would likely vanish, replaced by brutal, fragrant honesty. This radical thought experiment forces us to confront the true meaning of privacy, the nature of self, and the foundations of human connection. Would we be more honest, more authentic, more empathetic? Absolutely. But at what cost? The cost of every secret, every private moment, every unspoken desire, every fleeting, embarrassing thought, all laid bare for the world to inhale. We currently navigate a world where we project our thoughts and emotions through subtle cues, body language, and carefully chosen words. But what if that filtering mechanism was gone, replaced by a direct, undeniable olfactory link to our innermost selves? In such a world, our deepest essence wouldn't just be felt or understood. It would be smelled, irrevocably changing who we are, how we interact, and what it truly means to exist as a conscious being among others. So, would you choose to live in a world where you could smell thoughts, embracing the ultimate transparency? Or would the terrifying loss of inner sanctuary be too high a price for such profound connection?